The FujiCast is an independent Loading Zone production.
Saturday, 25th of April.
The FujiCast.
I can't believe we've almost finished with April. Kev, where's the time gone?
Oh, I know. It's soon going to be time to pay myself for something.
Really? Where do you get money from? That's very decadent of you.
I put a little pot outside my front door.
Have you?
Yeah.
I've looked at our tree, but it seems to be growing... Actually, today it seems to be growing a football in it. There's no money in there, though, that's for sure.
I tell you what, this is interesting. I didn't go actually, but the kids and Gemma went out for a walk this morning with the pooches, and just gently ambling across Malmesbury High Street was a grass snake.
No way.
Yeah. And in our garden, all of the flowers and everything are really blooming. And of course, the weather's nice, but so many bees. It's beautiful.
Do you know, we've noticed that we have, because we've got some bifold doors on the back, we have been inundated with, helping bees get back out again. And I said to Sam the other day, I don't think I've ever seen so many bees.
It's because there's less pollution and cars and stuff, so the air is cleaner for them, and the flowers are getting all excited because they've also got a little bit of more oxygen in the air. Yeah. So and the weather, of course, has helped.
Well, I know, but just we're 5 weeks and it's made that much difference to wildlife. It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. I think Mother Nature is doing its thing for us. Trying its best.
Yeah. It's Mother Nature's way of saying stop. Slow down, start again. Anyway, welcome to the Daily Show, the FujiCast, a show about you, your photography, your life, making pictures. Once weekly, now daily during lockdown. Weekends is our chance to play you longer form interviews to help you build your knowledge, or as in today's show, learn some new skills, maybe even a business. Everybody is using the term pivot, it seems, Kev. So, this could be a pivot cast today, with a view into the world or style of photography that could help you develop, launch, or even re-energize your business into the world of real estate photography. Or if photography is not your business, today is a chance to learn about how to make pictures within four walls successfully. And our guest Jon Buscall has even provided us with a link, which we'll put in the show notes to go see what he does, how he does it, and he's put a PDF explainer in there and links. I mean, he's worked really hard on this for us. Plus, you can download files and practice on stuff. How about that?
Cool.
So that'll be our interview today. Tomorrow, it's going to be with Ian Forsyth, and that's all about photojournalism. But we'll get to that tomorrow. Right.
I'm not sure I'm going to pivot, though. If I pivot, I'll fall over. I know it. I'll just trip and break something.
No, don't be doing that. So we're going to have one. There's three questions, but one person here, and then we'll launch into the interviews. So the weekends are going to be interviews, and then during the week, all the normal stuff. With in fact, it's the last week, isn't it, of doing the daily photo challenge? So from Monday, so we're going to have to find something new the week after. Heaven knows what that will be. I can't believe you are having trouble finding it. Honestly, Kev. Honestly.
Well, it was my idea, and I never wanted it to be boring, and then it just became really hard.
Did it? Okay, all right.
But yes, we have one more week to go, so that'll be fun, everybody.
Yeah, and then we'll have to think of a new idea. As I say, heaven knows what that is. We'll think of something, unless you think of something and tell us.
We might all be out by then.
There's always that. Hello, Kev. Jeremy Squires in Ohio. We seem to have a good following in Ohio, don't we? Remember once we scoffed, Kev, at the idea of Ohio being the perfect place for an American workshop and FujiCast. It seems to be rising up the ranks, doesn't it?
Ohio,
yes. Anyway, howdy, Kevin and Neil. Jeremy from Columbus here, which Columbus is the capital of Ohio. We've been hit pretty hard by COVID-19, but there are signs now of partial reopenings. Whether that'll mean anything to my photo business, I don't know. But you've been an excellent part of the daily life over the last month. I have 3 questions. Sorry for greed, but I figure you only get lucky once in a while to get a question on. So, are you ready? Question 1.
Yeah.
Have there been any positives during this period for you both?
Oh, for me, loads.
Go on.
Yeah, I think from the personal point of view, spending time at home, and the kids they're in their element, and all of that kind of stuff has been great. But the negatives far outweigh the positives.
Right.
Sadly. What about you?
Yeah, I've learned a lot about everybody else's businesses, it seems.
Yeah, and I have got a lot of work done, actually. A lot of my to-do list has been ticked off, that's for sure.
Well, the interesting thing, I've learned about people and their lives in a way that, would have been far more distance before. And oddly, social distancing's created some kind of closer connection, which is weird, isn't it? It's what they call an oxymoron, isn't it?
I saw a very funny meme this morning.
It is a meme. Oh, how long are you going to call this thing? Can we look this up, please?
Meme.
So, it's not a meme. Like, I'm going to look it up. Right, what is it?
Type it into Google and see what the lady on Google says.
Typed it in.
Meme.
There we go.
That was a man. What does he know? It's only when Google is a woman. They always know the answers.
Come on. It's
I saw a meme. I saw a meme.
M-E-M-E.
Meme.
Meme. It is a meme, Kev. You're going to keep calling it a meme. Go on.
I better call it a meme. Anyway, the meme said, you think we're in trouble now. You wait. In 20 years' time, the kids that we home educated while alcoholics will be running the country.
Oh, my God, yeah.
That made me chuckle.
I built a wooden train that Thomas can sit on out of wooden materials we already had. So that's something I wouldn't have done. I didn't spend 1 penny on any of those materials. Do you know, that's something I've learned to do. Not spend money. I know that sounds a really weird thing, but I've usually it would have been too easy to think, I could just grab one of those on Amazon. I saw the other day a really cool lens for the iPhone that's made by, I think it's Moment. Is it Moment? It's an anamorphic one. It looked really, really good. The film that came out to publicise it was really good. And I thought, I'll have myself one of... No, I won't.
Yeah. I feel like that too. Although I do feel like, because we've only got a tiny fridge and we can't do big shops because there's not enough stuff and you don't want to hang around in the shops too long. We do tend to be going to the co-op, regularly.
Do you?
And that's all I see on my accounts every day is co-op.
We've done the opposite of that, actually. Sam has been on this mission that a shop has to last 2 weeks. Toward the end of the 2 weeks, it's Mother Hubbard, it really is. But it has to last that long.
No, she's right. We would do that in a heartbeat, but we have nowhere to put it. That's the problem.
Yeah, we have 2 fridges.
Yeah, lucky you.
Show off. Question 2. 3 sheds, 2 fridges. Question 2. Are you nervous about returning to work? That's a very interesting. I mean, in health terms, I won't lie. If I were to walk into a room, Kev, with more than 20 people at the moment, I'd be nervous. I mean, it has yeah. But there's some amazing research and development and treatments going on, so I have to trust those people. I keep saying to myself, you've got this for us, for the human race.
Whatever you do not inject yourself in the eyeballs with bleach.
Oh, God, yeah, notwithstanding some of the odd things that have been said, and we don't want to make this political, I know, but there are some very strange thoughts coming out of that man.
I don't think that's political. I think that was just humour. Anyway,
that's true. Yeah, but you did say something strange, though, didn't you, Donald?
Don't be a cutie pie.
I'm not being a cutie pie, but really, come on. Bleach. Bleach.
I'm not nervous about the health side of things at all, because I don't believe that they will. I don't think we will be allowed to do stuff until it's safe again. So I'm happy with that. However, nervous about the business itself, and the economy and all of that stuff, and we've got a few things in the mix in the wedding world in the UK, at least, in that now people can also get married. They don't have to get married in a registry office or anything. They just have to get married in their garden if they want. So you've got all kinds of things happening to the industry. That's what I'm nervous about.
That's not law. That's not law yet, though, is it? That was being mooted, but it's not yet law, is it?
I think it is. I think it came in on the 1st of April. I think it snuck in under the radar. I might be wrong, but I'm sure it was coming on the 1st of April.
Well, because you still have to get a registrar to come and do that for you, don't you?
You still need the registrar to come. Yeah, you still need to get a registrar, but you can now do it in the street outside your house if you want. You don't have to have it in a registered place.
As I understand it, having talked to a couple of registrars before, and while that whole thing was beginning to gain momentum, there's a kind of a feeling that they're only going to give licenses to so many people. It can't run, run ravage, or whatever the correct term is, because they wouldn't have the time for it. They don't have the staff. They don't have the time for it.
No, absolutely. I agree with you. And ravage is not the right word.
It's not, is it?
I think it's rampant.
Rampant
is the word you're thinking of. However, the way I'm thinking ravage. In my negative little half glass full empty head is that if people can't get married in a big venue because of the restrictions, they might think, well, actually, why don't we do an aerobatic garden?
Might help us, Kev. We'll have more work.
Or less, one or the other. Well, yes. One of those two things will happen.
When you were talking about by the bleach thing, I did think, oh, please, no. My great-grandmother used to say to us, if you rub avocado in your hair, that'll stop you going bald. Look at me.
I always wondered why the top of your head was green.
Question 3. One of those what Neil would call left field questions. Would love to see you boys in the States when you're allowed to travel. Have you ever thought about doing a crowd-funded film or podcast or education tour for those of us in the States who follow your show? No is the answer. I'd never thought of that. Is it a good idea? Do crowdfunders work for that kind of stuff? I usually thought you had to be inventing something very, very clever, to have crowdfunding, like a television that could transport you to another country or something.
Well, people crowdfund books and stuff like that, don't they? Blue Coat Press, the John Bulmer, The North book that we discussed last week was a crowdfunded book. Of course, yeah. And it's now worth £1,300. Yeah. So people do crowdfund all sorts of things, yeah. However, I have to admit, I've seen lots of crowdfunded things that made me raise my eyebrows quite substantially, and they go up quite a long way. Things like help me get through university and stuff like that. Right. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah. Get through it yourself.
You miserable,
like I did, like the rest of us do.
Miserable old sausage. You're right. I think things like that, yeah. But projects like this, training, mentoring, podcast, filming, films actually do quite well through crowdfunding, don't they? If you've got something that's really going to help people, that people really want to be a part of.
Well, in that case, they're investing in the arts, aren't they? They're investing in something that's not an individual's own lack of resource. That's the difference.
Good point.
So to go back to the original question about crowdfunding to go to like the US or something, no, I wouldn't have thought it would be something. No. We'd be better off doing a chargeable workshop or something, and making it a business decision rather than expecting generosity, because ultimately that's what we do.
Absolutely. What have you done, Dave? You fallen on your microphone. Who would like to earn some money? Here's a couple of, not just a couple of ideas. Here's an interview that I was very fortunate to have with Jon Buscall earlier during the week. I talked to Jon about becoming a real estate photographer. Now, Jon's entrepreneurial ways may well get you thinking in this climate. He's been a journalist, a photojournalist. He helped launch a Liverpool FC fan podcast that's become huge. He's had a successful marketing and media business. He now lives in Sweden, where he translates and speaks a good range of languages. He's an event photographer. And then, of course, there's the real estate. So if what you hear sounds of interest, then Jon has provided a Dropbox link, which you'll find in the show notes on your podcast app, or, of course, on the episode 95 show notes of fujicast.co.uk. You will find images to reference, some to practice on. Then there's a PDF with his kit breakdown, lens suggestions, shooting tips, links to everything he talks about, including his own site, training, no affiliate links, by the way, just real, complete, helpful advice. I think it's I think it is the most thorough we've ever had from somebody who's interviewed for the show in terms of notes afterwards. So here comes 30 minutes of no-nonsense, straight-talking advice with Jon Buscall. Jon, thank you very much for your time in doing this, and it's a subject obviously that that seems to be increasingly popping into our email box. So I appreciate your time on this, and the fact that you're based in Sweden makes no difference. Well, it makes a little bit of difference, but I would say that probably what we're about to talk about can cross continents, can't it? Oh,
absolutely, and I'm very interested in what happens in this industry globally, just because of the nature of how it works and the community. And I'm also active in France as well as Sweden, so I'm happy to talk about the whole thing.
So you gave me a load of usually have to go away and think of questions. But you've given me some bullet points here, which probably form the best interview you could possibly ever have about working in real estate photography. I'm going to go through it in order. There's no particular order here, I'm sure, but I'm just going to enter it in order. Equally, I'll say this at the start and the end. We've also got a downloadable selection of images and a PDF from you. In fact, let's start with that. What do those bits mean with regard to the conversation we're about to have?
Well, what I put together, Neil, is a PDF which just outlines the gear I use, a very, very brief introduction into how I start editing images, if I edit them. Sometimes I outsource them. A few links to some very useful resources. They're not affiliate links. And then I've also included some raw files so people can see exactly what I'm shooting and what it looks like, and then the JPEG that results from those raw files. So people can download, have a play with the raw files. They can have a look at the notes, and it's also got my contact details if they've got some questions and wanted to follow up.
Well, it's exceptionally generous of you. So thank you very much for the time in advance of those that will clearly, I think, contact you. So let's start with the first point. You only need 3 lenses plus tripod. We haven't even talked about the camera here, but I would imagine you're about to say to me, it doesn't matter if it's Sony or Fuji or Nikon or Canon, it's the lenses that count.
Yeah, I think for anyone looking to get into real estate photography or architectural photography, there's often a sort of a focus on the gear, and really to get started you need a camera, of course, an APC, fine, but I use full frame, and you really need 3 lenses. One lens being a wide angle lens, you need a mid-range zoom, and then you need a nifty 50, something that you can take detail shots with. The majority of work that I do is, or any real estate photographer, certainly within the Scandinavian style of real estate stuff, will be using a 17-40 and shooting at 24 millimeters f.8. Typically 24 because it's closer to how we see a room and it's not over exaggerated. In Australia and the States, there you'll see, if you join forums where people are shooting real estate, there you'll see much, much wider real estate photographs. But typically, if you want to get started, if you want to look good, if you want people to sort of think that you're working at the corner edge of lifestyle and real estate photography, shooting between 20-24 for rooms is an ideal spot. So with those sort of 3 lenses, you can get started very, very easily. In fact, a lot of times I'll only even use 2. I won't even take the nifty 50 out of my bag because when I'm doing a detail shot, I'm so close to the detail that I'm shooting, whether it's a floor, tiled floor, or a wooden floor, that I get the bokeh, the separation, because I'm so close to the object that I'm shooting anyway. So it's very few times that I'd even need that 3rd lens.
If you're going into a small apartment, because that's lovely if you're working in a medium-sized house, but a small apartment with these tiny rooms. I'm thinking in particular in this country where we do like to build a small room and call it a bedroom. I think it's an oversized cupboard sometimes. The 24 is not really going to deal with that, though, is it?
Yeah, it is. It is. If you set your tripod at about 1 meter as a starting point, if you've got a 24, we're talking full frame. If you're at 24,
we'll do everything in full frame language. I know Kevin doesn't like it, but we're going to live with it.
Exactly. If you then position yourself just outside of the room, as you line up the shot, and let's say you're getting the wide angle shot, if you're lining up the shot so you get part of the door frame down, either the left or right side of the shot. So you're seeing where the room begins. And then if you get 2 corners of the room, then you see where the room begins and where it ends. And really you can do that with 24 millimeters 8 times out of 10. Mm-hmm. And I think I've put the link to my website. I'm sorry it's in Swedish, but you'll see in the gallery there and some links that I've put that most of the room shots, the bread and butter shots, if you like. They are taken from just outside the doorway. They show two corners of the room, so you can get a sense of the size. And they're all sort of taken at around about 23, 24, occasionally 20, but that's the standard wide shot. The reason for that is that you don't get these horrendously bent angles, verticals, pulling out, so it all looks like it's sprayed. Now, that's the market that I'm shooting for. As I said, in the States, maybe in Britain, I haven't shot in the UK, but certainly in the States, you do see much, much, much wider angle things. But what I get is when you talk to people who are selling or buying properties, getting people to come to a showing, if the apartment looks much, much bigger than it actually is, people turn around and leave.
What about portrait versus landscape orientation?
The majority of shots that I would take are horizontal, landscape, but a walk-in closet, a bathroom. I shoot a lot of 1 or 2 room apartments here in Stockholm, and often you can't take a landscape picture of a bathroom because it's basically a toilet and a hand basin and a shower. But what you can do is you can take 2 vertical shots to make one landscape shot. So I might step back right out of the bathroom, get the whole door frame, just so you can see part of the toilet seat, you can see the tiles on the floor, the sink and the shower. And then you can position next to that a second detail shot of maybe it's an expensive hand basin, maybe it's the tiles, or just another angle of the bathroom. Sometimes I can combine 2 vertical shots with 1 landscape shot as well. But they can be really good ways of complementing the story of the property that you're building, particularly because lifestyle, the lemon shot, as we tend to call it here in Stockholm, this photograph of lemons on kitchen countertops, those detailed lifestyle shots can be a really nice way of augmenting a shot that gives the person looking at the room information. So I might take a shot of a dining room seating place at a dining room as in a vertical position, and then place next to that a tight detail shot of the kitchen counter. Maybe it's made in marble, maybe it's got a really nice work surface, something like that. So you can build the story through a combination of information and lifestyle pictures.
How long are you budgeting? Maybe not financially, maybe this is just something in your mind. When you go into I know it's a bit of a how long's a piece of string question, because an apartment from a house to a huge property would vary in size and time that you spend there. But is there an average, Jon, that you like to spend in a property?
That's a really good question, because it's a question about the industry itself. And anyone listening to this, if they're thinking about real estate photography, has to be aware that you can either go it alone or that you can go and work for the really big players in the industry. And across Europe, you'll find so many bigger companies that will find jobs for photographers to go in and shoot property, and they'll take care of the sales, and they'll load you up with 4 or 5 bookings in one day. And I've done this, and it's the gig economy in many respects, because you'll find yourself, you'll wake up in the morning and you'll check your bookings for the day, and you could actually be shooting 5 apartments or 3 apartments and 2 houses in one day. And so that really gives you about an hour and a half tops, because you're paid per property. You're not paid for the time that you're there. You're not paid for the travel. And there's a lot of disgruntled people in the industry who are working for those kind of companies. So you really learn to go in, find exactly what you need to shoot, and get out of there as quickly as possible. But bear in mind, in that kind of setup, often the owners haven't done as much as they should have done. You've got to come in, spot all the cables that need to be moved. I've had to help people take beds out of rooms before. You're really working at high speed. So there is a big difference between doing that kind of work, and if you're self-employed or not working as a subcontractor, if you're working directly with the agents, then you could give yourself 2 hours maybe for a property, and the agents will see you as it's like they're salespeople. They know how to get a really good deal. So being a photographer working with with people whose living is selling, that's a tough one. But even they start to realize that if you're a solo photographer free of an agency, you can spend that bit more time with their customers, give them that slightly more exclusive experience. So there are the two sides to the industry. But to go back to your first question, I've shot a 3-story house with masked photographs, 40 photographs to be delivered to the agent, and done a floor plan as well in 2 hours.
The editing, that's the bit that you save time on when you invest some time in making sure what you're shooting is perfect.
If you photograph 3 properties in one day, you don't want to come home at the end of the day and then edit 60, 70, 80 photographs to deliver to the agent the next day, who will be expecting them the next day. There's a lot of intense pressure. So then that's why if you're interested in real estate photography and you start doing a bit of investigation, you'll discover that the other side of real estate photography is outsourcing and editing real estate photography. And that is a minefield in itself. You need to be able to do it yourself. And that's why in the Dropbox that I'm making available, you can see the kind of photographs that I take on site, the 2 or 3 photographs that I take per finished photograph, that I either then edit or send off for editing.
You do outsource then? You're happy to outsource?
I do both.
Right.
And I think you have to be able to do both. You have to be able to edit it yourself, because with outsourcing, you can be let down. I prefer to outsource. And when I say minefield, I really do mean it is a minefield. For starters, it's hard to get recommendations for outsourcing companies, because all the photographers out there, if they have good outsourced company, they want to guard them and keep them and look after them, because it's a really, really important part of your business.
What's your process then, or if you like, workflow?
I'd go shoot an apartment. Let's say I've got to deliver 25 pictures to the client. So then I'd get back to my place, or maybe from my laptop in the car, go through, I'll open up all the pictures. I use Photo Mechanic to do that. I think Kevin and you have mentioned that in the past. I look at all the shots. I'll go through and decide these are the ones that I'm sending. I'll then take screenshots of any that I see that might have a problem, that I say, here's a screenshot of this particular room, take out the cable to the blah, 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 or take out the lamp that is crooked. And I'll also take screenshots of the standing vertical pictures that I want to be matched into left-right pairs, and then I'll send all that off in the hope and expectation that it will be delivered the next day, and 9 times out of 10 it is. I
was looking at your equipment list that you're sending out with this link that we're going to put for you, publish for you. You're using the Canon 5D4. There's a 5D3 and a 5D4. 5D4, and I don't think the 5D3 does, but the 5D4 certainly has the opportunity to HDR stack, doesn't it? How much are you falling back on that? Not at all.
Right. I don't HD stack at all. I do it all manually. I typically take 3 shots. So I'm photographing a living room. I've got my tripod at about a meter to start with. I've got my knee pads on because I'm 50. I'm 6'2". My knees can't take not having knee pads, and that's a really good investment. I get down there, and the first thing I do, I check that I'm at ISO 100 to keep the noise to an absolute minimum. I then check that I'm at f8 because I want everything in focus. I'm at 24 millimeters on the lens, and then I overexpose. I try and make the room as bright as possible, and I've got a speed light in my hand, and then I take a shot of the room with the speed light. I use one of those cheap Unongos, and I don't have it mounted onto the horseshoe of the camera because I want to keep the movement to an absolute minimum. I hold it in the air. I've got a trigger on the camera that sets the flash off. I have the flash manually at about 16 for the first overexposed shot. When I've taken that, I then underexpose a shot, and I go down as dark as possible that I can still see part of the room. I can still get the light right outside because I want to get the window shot right. And those two shots, the first shot that's overexposed and the second shot that's underexposed, they will form the basis of that photograph that I deliver. And I don't use a standard HD bracket because I found that when I first tried that, there isn't enough room for the nuances that you need to get the right shot. I just found from experience of knowing what I needed, and it varies from position to position in the room because the light changes so quickly. And I often take a third shot for the white balance with flash, which I use for color checking. But you can see all these examples in RAW that I've in the file that I've shared. And I think you'd be very, very surprised that they're not as bracketed. If you look at all the export data, they're not the same kind of splits that you would get if you were using standard brackets.
I think your answer to this is going to be no, because we can see that by the examples of the work that you've proffered. But you're not shooting around the room, putting that speed light in different places and illuminating different parts of the room.
No, I don't. And that's actually a really good point to make, because if you look at some of the online training, and I even recommended one in the sheet that I put out there, there's lots of training out there, and lots of the high-end training will want you to have lots of external lights and take multiple exposures and get the light perfect in one part of the room and another. It's not really necessary. And I've shot really, really big properties, with the same technique, because if you're overexposing in your first initial shot, you're getting a nice bright shot. I never shoot with any lights on in the house or the apartment. Even if I'm photographing in darkest Sweden in November, December, I just go up to a 30-second exposure and get that really bright look. And then with the underexposed shot to fill in the colors, the darkness, it's really not necessary, because in Photoshop, when you do luminosity masking, when you're masking your layers to take out any shadows that you don't need, usually you can find that with the 2 or 3 shots that you've taken, you can combine it. It would just take extra amounts of time, much, much more investment in gear. If you look at the photographs that I've taken that's on my website, all those photographs there are taken with the strategy that I've outlined here. One cheap Yanungo flash held in the air as I take the shot. Second shot, the Yanungo set at 1, held in the air. I'm not moving around. It's only in the bathroom that you might get flash reflecting like a mirror, and then that maybe needs a bit more work in Photoshop in post, but it's a simple technique.
Do you ever dump the flash and just do long exposures instead?
Yeah, I do.
It was very much I think this was very much an American concept. I certainly don't recall in this country seeing a lot of these, but the familiar walkthrough video. Do you do those as well? Yeah,
I've got a DJI Osmo Pocket, which is fine, which is great for walkthroughs. Handheld, nice stabilization. Really, it could be it could be better as a wide angle. It's not as wide angle as you would hope. You can get cheap on eBay. You can get lens adapters to make it more wider if necessary, but it's not really super necessary, I think. And most agents will want to see that you walk through the property, that someone gets a sense for it. And I think this is becoming more and more important.
You mentioned much earlier on in our chat that some of these shots were taken with a pole. I was thinking, oh, right, okay, a pole or a drone, or what kind of extra? We've talked about the Osmo DJI. Okay, that makes sense.
I don't use a drone. I don't have a drone.
What about a pole?
A pole I do. The financial investment in a pole is not that much.
No.
The financial investment in a drone is considerable. I think the EU are changing their laws with drones. Certainly here, there are agents that want drones, and if they specifically want a drone and you can't offer it, they'll either get someone else in to do it, or increasingly agencies are having their own drone.
How tall is the pole, John?
I reckon the one I use must go up to about 6, 7, 8 meters high, even higher. It's really high.
And how do you trigger the shot?
From my mobile phone and through Bluetooth with the camera.
Let's change tack now. We've been talking real estate. Airbnb. Now, there is a market, but how do you reach the Airbnb owners? I mean, you can't just look for Facebook groups. There's got to be a far better strategy than that.
If you're working with property photography and you see Airbnb as another potential way of working, you can actually reach out to Airbnb themselves. That they also have guidelines for photographers, and if they like your work, they'll reach out to you. Now, their guidelines might be different to the style that you shoot, but any good photographer that wants to do this kind of work can adapt. It's a little bit more wide. For my taste, it's more wide angle. They want you to be lower down, but certainly on Airbnb's website. The other thing that you can do is that you can use the Airbnb listings for experiences.
Yes.
You can advertise your photography skills with other things and use that to build your network. It's about being active socially. The other thing, of course, is being a content producer, putting it online.
Yes.
Again, using Instagram stories, telling stories about the work you're doing. And it's not just about having the best photographs, Neil. It can also be, if you're the most approachable, the friendliest, it looks like I would like to work with that photographer, they'll reach out to you. Because it can be a bit scary booking a photographer to come and take your pictures of your home.
Now, we could have done this right at the start, but actually it makes sense to have talked about what's technically required and how you move around a house right through to some marketing. But how on earth do you get started?
Now, this is a really difficult one. I was a journalist back in the 90s, and then I started a marketing company. And the only thing I got to do creatively, other than speak to customers, was take photographs for adverts and for content marketing campaigns and write stuff. And then after 15 years or so, I decided I wanted to go back and just be myself. I didn't want to have 6 other people on my team. So I thought, I'll close down my team. I'll go and take photographs. I'll go and take real estate photographs. And so what I did was I made sure I had enough money behind me, and then I went and worked as a subcontractor, because I didn't have to worry about selling my own skills. The work was served up to me, and I learned the business that way. I learned how it worked. Now, you have to be very, very careful, because everyone working in this industry will put you on a non-competitive contract.
Yes.
Which is very, very difficult, and they don't pay you enough. I mean, it is the gig economy. You'll get to go around and take lots of photographs, but you'll build a portfolio. Yes. But you need to make sure that contractually you're in a position that you can walk away and you can go and do things yourself, that you are not undercutting them, that you build relationships with different agents. I mean, this is all subject to your own local market. One of the things that's even worth checking is that if the contract they make you sign is worth the salt, it may well be that they're a big company and they'll work on the idea that you as a small person won't actually go up against them. But so it's a very tricky thing. That's one of the ways to get started. The other thing is that, you have to go out there because you have to have a portfolio. You've got to have something to show people. And getting started with agents without having a track record is very, very hard. So I started out the hard way. I worked as a subcontractor for a while.
Now, surviving in the industry is the next thing. You sound like you've survived because you're not subbing anymore. You've built relationships. And
I've also had to do a second full-time job. I translate. I'm lucky enough to speak several languages. So on the sides, I realized that, I'm investing in a future. My first love is event photography. News photography, but no one pays you for that regularly these days. So I love documentary events. And I did that as much as possible. I used photographing real estate as an opportunity to meet people and hand out my cards and say, well, I photographed your property. Can I photograph your event?
So I'm wondering then, with the events and real estate, they're quite different skills in all respects. Why you chose the real estate and didn't decide, I'm going to go all out at event photography instead? Because
I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket. Because amazingly, I had a crystal ball that saw what was coming down.
Yes.
No. I just learned from being in business that when I was working in journalism, I realized that industry that I love got taken away from me overnight. I was working for News International and some European media outlets. I was the Nordic correspondent, and literally overnight I got an email saying, all you guys are losing your jobs. And so I had to. So after that, I've made sure that I've tried to keep multi skills. Yes. I don't think there is one career as being an event photographer now. I don't think there is one career being a real estate photographer. I don't think there's one career as a wedding photographer. I think now it's good to be able to multitask.
That's exactly what we've been talking about of late. Is this idea of being a, I know people don't like the expression jack of all trades, but
it's difficult.
Actually, it's an advantage now, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm 50 years old. Business and life have been humbling. Yes. They are.
Yes.
And anything can happen, as we've all just seen. No one imagined this. And the only way I would have... the way that I've survived is because, well, Sweden hasn't had the same kind of lockdown as everyone else for good and bad. I have my own thoughts about that. Yeah. But because I've been translating, I've been able to keep going. That's enabled me to save myself. But also because I've been in Sweden, I have been photographing. I photographed, 3 properties last week. There's no event work at the moment.
No.
This week, I haven't got any properties to photograph this week. There's more, the situation here. There's more discussion over what's good, what's not working, what our government is telling us, what our authorities are telling us. But what I can say to anyone that's listening, if you're a photographer who is a full-time photographer at the moment, looking for new things to do, I would say, and if you've never done real estate photography, consider it. I didn't have a love of architecture, but I've learned to have a love of spaces. It's improved my establishing shots for event photography.
That's interesting.
It's improved my detail shots because I've learned new skills. And I think we do constantly have to we should be learning. We do need to take on new things. And even if it means, we don't see the advantage of it, it feeds in the long run.
You mentioned 5-0. I like to think of 5-0 as still fairly youthful, John. Is it a career that you can, or not necessarily a career, because we've talked about having multi-layers, but is it something you can see yourself doing for a good amount of time yet?
It's a really difficult one. I'm over 6'2". I've shrunk a bit. I was closer to 6'3" 20 years ago, but I don't have the greatest of backs. Right. But I could probably still get into the same pair of trousers that I fit when I was 20. I might have lost all my hair when I was 17, but I've kept my waistline. And as I promised I would, and it's really hard the older that you get to be able to crouch down against a wall and to really, really cram your body to make that room as big as possible without going, I'm just going to make it f/17. I'm just going to, make it, 17 millimeters or open it right up. And some days those knees really hurt. My son is a personal trainer. I probably do more squats a day than he does. Think about it. Can you do 2,000 squats in a day?
Well, I've never tried, I don't think. You sound like you may have done.
I on days when you've done 5 properties, I mean the sweet spot is two properties a day that you have good time, that you have your £200 to £300 of property or euros of property. That's good. Then you're not in the I'm having to jump up and down. But it is tough on the body. The other thing is eyesight. I have -4 short-sighted, but I wear contact lenses when I shoot property. I wear contact lenses so I can see the whole room. I have +3 reading glasses to see the back of my camera. I shoot everything through live view. You have to be able to see the back of your camera to see the grid, to be able to line things up. You don't need a super expensive. You do need a ball head to be able to rotate it, but you don't need to get the most expensive ball heads. But then I have to use +1 reading glasses to do the floor plan. And if you're going to shoot for commercial agents, being able to do a floor plan is also very, very, very important in a lot of international markets.
How does a floor plan look when you shoot it?
Well, that's the bit where you take out your piece of paper or your iPad, Android tablet, and you go around with a laser. Is it I don't know the English word. Is it a laser meter? So you blip to see the walls, and you draw out the floor plan.
Oh, you're literally drawing. Oh my word! Okay,
and then you send it, you outsource it to have it turned into a nice floor plan by your outsourcing company, or you yourself get home and you use one of the software online solutions to make up your template. I've put links to a couple of sites that have, I think that both have tests that will enable you to make floor plans. But they are that was the shock when I started actually doing real estate photography, that I had to do floor plans as well. It's a bit like a crossword.
Now, one final question: when you go into somebody's property, I would imagine, you're looking around, you think, well, that's nice. You've got a lovely sauna over there, an integrated sauna in your bathroom, or you've got a hot tub in the. Do you get terribly envious seeing all these amazing properties?
I do come home and rant a bit at my wife, saying we would never get X amount for our kitchen and that we must change everything like this. You do get a sort of bit work injured, if you like, from those sort of things.
Sincere thanks again to Jon Buscall, and as we said right at the start, you'll find in the show notes on both the app and on the website, all the W's, fujicast.co.uk. You will find a link to everything that Jon was talking about, links to kits, links to his own website, and of course some images to practice on. There's a whole PDF of goodies in there for you, so do go grab that. And my thanks to Jon for doing that for us. Tomorrow we've got another interview. That's the way we've decided to do this. It's worked out okay, I think, this way, Kev, isn't it? Really, we're going to have the interviews at the weekend. And during the week, we might have a little soup. Is it a soup song? Is it a soup song?
Soup song generally means one last go.
Does it? Oh, I thought it was like a little trinket, some sort of nugget from the interviews coming up. Have I got that wrong as well? Oh, there's two words wrong in one episode. Ravaging and rampaging.
A very good friend of mine, says the soup song all of the time. Would you like a soup song for a little glass of wine? And we end up having about 30 soup songs.
That's not really a soup song, is it, really? Kev just a moment ago said, excuse me, turn the microphone off. He says, I need to blow my nose. Oh, you are suffering, aren't you, at the moment? Oh,
yeah. Stop mowing your lawns.
Yes. Right, back tomorrow. We've got Ian Forsyth on the show. Have a nice rest of the day, Kev.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. We're back tomorrow with another show. Well, unless we're fired, we'll talk to you then. Goodbye, sweetheart. Goodbye. Goodbye.
The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production.